In the last video, we began discussing plugin basics. Let's continue with how to reorder and copy and paste plugins. All right, so I've got exercise 2 from chapter 8 open, and this just has the 3 plugins that we loaded in the last video. So if you want to follow along, you can open this up. So you'll notice down here in device view, with even just these 3 effects, that things are starting to get a little bit crowded. So we can actually minimize a plugin, and we can do that by just double-clicking on the plugin title bar. You'll notice that that minimizes it down to this vertical rectangle. And if I want to bring it back or restore it to its original size, I can just double-click it again. We can also reorder plugins. So for example, if I want the compressor to be before the EQ, I'll just click select it and I'll just drag it over, and you'll notice that as I'm doing that, it's showing me a blue line where this is going to end up. And if I let go, it reorders them. Now I could try to put the compressor before the instrument, but as I do that, notice that ugly orange message down in the bottom left-hand corner that's telling me that I can't put an audio effect before an instrument. It can only go after the instruments. So just remember that as we talked in the last video, on a MIDI track, you can have MIDI effects followed by a virtual instrument, followed by one or more audio effects, but you can't do that in an order other than that: MIDI, instrument, and audio. So continuing, we can also copy and paste devices. For example, if I wanted to have a second compressor here after the EQ, I could just select the title bar and hold down my Option key and then click and drag and let it go over here, let's say on the end, and now I've got 2 compressors. I can even duplicate a device by simply click selecting it and going Command D if you're on a Mac or Control D on a PC. And now I have 2 compressors at the end. All right, let's minimize a couple of these because it's getting awful busy here. And now I can pull over and we can see all of the plugins here. So with any one of these selected, if you want to select them all, you can just go Command A if you're on a Mac or Control A if you're on a PC. That selects all of the devices. And now I can just use my copy command, then select the next track over, go down and click in the device area and use my paste command. And I've pasted that same collection of devices from one track to another. Now, while we're here, I want to talk a little bit about the functions that we see in the title bar. First of all, in the upper left-hand corner, you have the activator button or the on-off button. So if you want to mute a device, we can just disable it. Then next to that, you'll notice that right now we're seeing this blue hand on analog, but not over here on compressor. And that's because the plugin is actually seeing that I have a controller that has instant mapping. So analog is actually seeing that there's a controller out there that can control it. And so with that hand active, I've got knobs on my controller that will map automatically to these knobs and functions that we see here. For example, if I grab the first knob and turn that, you'll see it's changing the wave shape for oscillator 1. If I grab another knob and turn that, you'll see that it's controlling the cutoff frequency on the filter. But if I click select compressor, notice that the hand moves over there. And if I grab that same knob that was previously controlling the wave shape option, now if I dial that, it's now controlling the threshold on the compressor. So this is a function of those native Ableton controller devices. And if you have one of those and it's enabled correctly, the controls will automatically map for all kinds of functions. Now we'll talk about that in a later video, so you'll want to check out the video on instant mapping. All right, let's continue and let's go over to the right here, and the next option that we have here is for hot swapping. So if I click that button, you'll notice that the browser is now lit up and we're in the analog category, and if I want to change to a different preset, well, I can just go down and choose one, click it. If I don't like that one, I can click another one. So I can quickly go back and forth until I have a preset that I like. And when I'm finished, I can either click the X button up top or the one on the device. And I can also access hot swapping mode by pressing the shortcut key, the letter Q. That will take us into Hot Swap and back out of it. All right, and then the last function that we see here in the upper right-hand corner is the Save Preset button. So if you click that, it will jump you into the user library and into the presets category, and then go into a folder that's specific to the device. And here you can give a name to this preset and save it for use in a later project. Now I've already saved this one, so I'm just going to hit my escape key to get out of here. And then finally, I'll point out that over on compressor, we see a triangle. And if you click that, you'll open up additional functionality. So analog didn't have that, but compressor did. And that's just an example that some of the devices have these unfold buttons and additional hidden functionality, and others don't. Last thing I want to talk about here is I want to go into the third-party plugins, and let's load one. So I'm going to grab Serum down here at the bottom. You can grab any third-party plugin that you have, and let's just drag it out here into the Drop Files and Devices area and let go. Notice that that also creates a track. We see the third-party interface, and then in Device View, we see Ableton's universal third-party plugin interface. So I wanted to talk about some things that we see here. So first of all, you'll see this button that looks like a tool or a wrench. That's the Show Hide plugin window. So if I click that, notice that we open and close the third-party interface. Now, if I close that by clicking on the button here in the upper left-hand corner, I can still bring it back by, again, clicking on the little Show Hide button. Now, next to the Show Hide button, there's a disclosure triangle. If I click that, and that unfolds, we can see this Configure button. And if I enable that, what I can do is I can select parameters on the third-party device so that they show up here, and I can make adjustments here, and it's easier for me to map those if I'm doing MIDI mapping. So for example, let me choose the cutoff knob for that filter, and I'll choose the wavetable position over here for oscillator A. And then I'm going to disable the Configure button. Now while I'm here, I'll point out that if you want to load a preset in the third-party device, you have to have the third-party interface open, and then you need to find how to load presets in the user manual for that device, not in Ableton. So here on Serum, it's just this window right here. And if I want to save it, I can click this Save button. So you'll need to learn how to do that with all of your different third-party devices. Now, with this selected, I want to go down to the Ableton interface here. And because I've set up these two parameters here, I can grab them and I can control them here, but I can also assign them to this XY controller that's part of that third-party interface. So I can click the pop-up menu and choose one of the options here. Let's go cutoff, and then let's go wavetable position. And now as I grab this XY controller, you can see that it's controlling both of those parameters up here in the animation in those two areas in Serum. All right, so now that we understand the basics of how plugins work in Ableton, check out the next video where we'll discuss instrument devices.